Urban Meyer was leading the charge for the Jaguars last year. And what seemed to be the final straw, the thing that resulted in the Jaguars firing him, even though they claimed that it wasn't, because they'd known about it for months. It's just once it became public, then, we have to do something about this. The claim from former Jaguars kicker Josh Lambo that he was kicked by Urban Meyer during pregame warm-ups in advance of a preseason game against the Cowboys in August. And it was a fairly hard kick in Lambo's version of the events. Meyer denies anything and everything and yada, yada, yada. They fired him after that. Now Lambo is suing the Jaguars. He wants his base salary of $3.5 million for 2021. He wants compensation for his emotional distress. And the argument is that Meyer physically and verbally abused him. Lambo made a complaint under the Florida Private Sector Whistleblowers Act, and a lot of the states have a provision like this where it encourages people to come forward with complaints, and it gives them protection against retaliation. And I guess the argument would be, hey, this guy would still be the kicker for the Jaguars, would have been the kicker in 2021, but for the fact that he complained about Urban Meyer. Here's why it's going to be a problematic lawsuit from the get-go. The collective bargaining agreement. One of the things you give up as a player when you're part of a union is the ability to run to court when your rights have been violated. There's a grievance procedure that he will have to go through. Now, he could argue that his rights under the Florida Private Sector Whistleblowers Act are exempted from the CBA, and there's different legal arguments that could come up. But I guarantee you, the first move by the Jaguars, just like it would be if and when Meyer sues them for the balance of his contract and they try to take it to the secret-rigged kangaroo court of Roger Goodell, Lambo sues them. The first move is going to be to take it to the much less secret, much less rigged, much less kangaroo court of the CBA. But even there, the team gets a better outcome because you avoid going in front of a judge and a jury. But that's the procedure that's baked in to the labor management relations, and that's where Lambo is probably going to have to go. I'm surprised he filed the lawsuit because usually these are things that are handled under the CBA.
So, I mean, first off, I want to ask you a question. The first thing is, like, again, where people, like I hear sometimes, first off, if it was just like a friendly nudge kick, like where, oh, man, I just, put my foot and hit you in the thigh or your butt, and, it's like a camaraderie. Nothing would be said. There obviously had to been enough of a kick here for a guy to come with this complaint. I don't think if it was just a playful nudge, even though he's a kicker, he's still a football player and used to these kind of things. It had to have crossed the line. Now, the thing I want to ask you, Mike, is like, does this help or hurt Jacksonville as far as like if Meyer wants to recoup money? Is it going to be a good thing to go, hey, look, this guy, Urban Meyer, broke a lot of rules. Look what he did to Josh Lambo. But at the same time, like to what you're kind of saying, you could also go, well, wait, that has nothing to do with it. They kicked him whenever, and then they let him go forever. So I guess that's where I struggle with it as I, get facts of the information here.
Well, we saw the very strong quotes that were made by Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, to Jarrett Bell of USA Today. In the aftermath of the news emerging that Fox and Meyer were closing in on a deal for him to return. Right after that, and again, there are no coincidences, right after that, Khan unloads on Meyer. How can you work with someone like that? It was issues of trust, et cetera, et cetera. It was as harsh of a comment that I've heard an owner make about a former coach since Al Davis got the overhead projector out and went after Lane Kiffin all those years ago. So, there's some acrimony there. Oh, and by the way, Urban Meyer still hasn't been rehired by Fox. I wonder if they're just letting I don't know, they have to rethink if they can afford Urban Meyer after committing to Tom Brady. Maybe Urban Meyer's money and a lot of other people's money went to Tom Brady. I digress. This helps the Jaguars potentially in their fight against Meyer when Meyer tries to get the balance of his contract, and it's going to be a lot more than the $3.5 million that Lambo thought he was going to make last year. So this does potentially help. But my argument would be, if I was representing Meyer, you knew about this in August, you didn't fire me then.
Right.
So how can it be for cause? You just had a bunch of little things that weren't true cause, and those were enough things that caused you to say, we just want to be done with this guy, but we really don't have cause to do it because everything we knew about, we forgave by not firing him then. Oh, well, it was for cause after the stuff in Cincinnati and abandoning your post and going up to Columbus and being videotaped in a way that embarrassed the team. Well, you should have fired me then. Well, you didn't really tell us the truth when we interrogated you about what happened. Well, you should have fired me then when you knew. Well, you kicked the kicker. Well, you should have fired me then.
But what about cause for the amount of things building up to like what you're talking about, to going, okay, maybe not that, but here it was strike 94. He did something this week again, so we finally were like, that's it. He's not going to learn. Is there no precedent for that?
3 points to make very quickly. Number one, was there something that happened the week that they fired him that was just coincidental to the news emerging that he had allegedly kicked Josh Lambo? Because if the catalyst was the public now knows what we've known since August, I like that argument on Meyer's behalf. I don't like many other arguments on Meyer's behalf, but I like the one that you're kind of full of crap here if you're saying that that wasn't the catalyst when there really wasn't anything else. Secondly, what kind of a record did they create? What kind of documentation is there? And this is one of the things I used to advise employers on once upon a time in my legal career. And then when I flipped over to representing the rights of individuals, far more fulfilling, frankly, I would always attack that. What kind of a paper trail did you create? You have all these concerns. Where's the memos? Where's the file? Where's the warnings? Where's this? Where's that? Where are the opportunities you've given my client to try to understand what the issues are and conform his or her behavior to what your expectations are? So let's see how you've papered the file. Third, most importantly, any claim Meyer makes is going to the secret rigged kangaroo court of Roger Goodell, who is going to be far more likely to find for Urban Meyer. And this is the point that we've made all the time. There's always going to be enough facts to come to either conclusion. And if you have a baked-in bias, if you have an inherent conflict of interest, if you are making a decision that involves somebody who is paying you $60 million a year or more to do your job, you're going to be more likely to find in their favor. It's pretty obvious that there's a conflict of interest there, to the point where I can't believe they've gotten away with this for all these years. So Meyer's going to have a hard time, and this does help. This does help Jacksonville's case, even if it doesn't fit the legal analysis.
It just shows.
And even if it's hard to, it's one of those things that, you come to the conclusion, the guy's a butthole. He got what he deserved.
Yeah, right.
This is how the legal sausage gets made. It is not blind justice. It is not, we are going to objectively and dispassionately assess the facts, apply the law to the facts in a methodical way, and treat this like a mathematical equation. No. You decide, and juries do it, and judges do it. Do we like this person? Does this person deserve the justice that he or she is seeking? Is this person someone that we are comfortable giving justice to? All those things go into it, and you decide where you want it to end, and you work backward to get there. That's how it works. Everywhere. That's how it works. So, and that's how it'll work for Urban Meyer. The fact that Josh Lambo's on the record with this lawsuit now is not going to help Urban Meyer get his money. And he should have signed the deal with Fox before they gave his money to Tom Brady.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.